Welcome back to the Stories That Shape Us. Today we are on episode 12 of our podcasting journey. This podcast is a place where guests share the powerful, life-altering experiences that have shaped who they are as individuals as they continue to write their own life story. As always, I'm your host, Brock Doty, and today we have a truly incredible, inspiring, and heart-wrenching story to share with you. It's a story of survival, of surrender, and of God's divine intervention. In the midst of chaos and despair, and it all begins on a mountain in Monterrey, Mexico. Our guest today, Kenny Barnwell, has lived a life that most of us can only dream of. He's toured the world for over 2 decades, performing with some of the biggest names in the music industry. But despite all the fame and excitement of touring on the road, it was a day in Mexico that would completely change the course of Kenny's life. What he endured that day was beyond physical pain, but it was a battle for his very life. Kenny's story isn't just about surviving a cartel ambush, it's about finding purpose in the darkest moments and being guided by something greater than himself. So without further ado, let's dive into this journey and hear the story that reshaped Kenny's life forever. Kenny, welcome to the Stories That Shape Us, my friend. I'm happy you could take some time to be here today.
I am super blessed to get to be here with you today, man. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
Absolutely. So let's start at the beginning. Before all of the music, all of the tours, can you take us back to your early life? What was that like?
Well, man, I grew up on a dead end dirt road in Villa Rica, Georgia, about 45 minutes outside of the city of Atlanta, way out in the sticks, as we like to say. And I grew up to deaf parents. My parents can't hear. I'm the youngest of five. However, music found me when I was about 10 years old. My brother was taking guitar lessons, one of my older brothers, and he wasn't really taking to it. And I found his guitar sitting in his room one day, and I kind of picked it up and just kind of naturally started to take to it. I started playing guitar, drums, keyboards, really like any instrument. I always like to say music found me because it's certainly growing up with deaf parents. We didn't have a lot of music influence from them. It was mainly like church or my older siblings. But I fell in love with music, man. That was kind of like my medicine growing up because when I was about 14 years old, I was the last one left in our house. My parents sat me down, was like, listen, we're going through a divorce. And it really hit me heavy. They wanted me to choose which parent to stay with. I didn't necessarily choose a parent to stay with per se. I kind of just chose to stay in the town that I had grown up in, my little town, Villa Rica. But the way I medicated was through drugs. I got really heavily involved in drugs when I was about 14 years old. And fast forward till I was not quite 16, I ended up dropping out of high school. I left home and went down to Jacksonville, Florida, which was the only other city I knew because we used to visit my great grandmother there in the summers. And by the time I was 15 and a half years old, I was homeless on the streets living in Jacksonville, Florida.
Wow.
A bit of a rocky start to my childhood for sure. Um, but I'd always had music. Music was always a part of that. In fact, the only thing that I actually had with me was my guitar. I carried this acoustic guitar with me during that whole time. And I was homeless from about 15 and a half till about 17 and a half. So I spent a lot of time on sleeping on benches or under overpasses or, friends' couches, things like that. And when I was about 17 and a half, I was working a variety of different jobs and I was working with this entrepreneur who owned this pressure washing van. He used to pick me up from wherever I was staying, and he would, try to pour into me because he apparently saw some sort of potential in me, and he would just like want to pour into me and help me. Of course, all I wanted at the time was a pack of cigarettes and maybe some weed, some drugs. We stopped by a bookstore one day because he was so excited that he had ordered these two books. He was so thrilled, and I was just like, okay, dude, whatever. Like, let's just go pressure wash some cars, pressure wash some houses. And he gets these two books, and he goes, you know what, Kenny? I'll tell you what. If you read these books, I'll give you a bonus of 20 bucks per book. He's like, I'll bonus you out. I'll give you some extra money. And I was like, well, hey, listen, I could use some extra weed and cigarettes. So of course I'm going to do it. The first book I read was Who Moved My Cheese. Have you ever read that book, Brock?
That's a good one. That's a really good one.
Good one.
Simple
Really
read
great
though
book.
too.
Yeah, really quick read. But it started to affect me actually. I was just like, I understood it. I love to read actually. I started to really kind of understand, not being a victim. Next day he comes in, he goes, well, listen, if you read the second book, I'll give you the $20, which was Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
I haven't read that one.
It shifted me in a way that I was like, man, like it really helped me understand and kind of investing in life and as opposed to just being a worker and just trying to get by it helped me really start to realize that maybe there's more than just kind of like fumbling along in life. I started to raise my standards and started to demand more of myself. And through that pursuit, I ended up moving back to my little town outside of Atlanta, coming off the streets. I ended up saving $1,000 for this van, this old 1991 Plymouth Voyager van. It had like wood grain paneling on the side, and I was living in my van. At that point, hey, I had a stable place to stay.
You had a roof over your head.
I had a roof over my head, man. When I was living in my town, just trying to take odd end jobs, I met this lady that I was building a fence for because I was, always kind of handy. Growing up in the country, you really learn how to do things, build things and fix things. And so I was doing some work on her house and she was telling me all about her history in the music business. And I was a musician, I played music, I love music, wrote songs, and I was very intrigued. She was telling me that she used to tour with all these bands like Aerosmith and Hootie and the Blowfish. And I was just like, really, like, how amazing is that? Like, you traveled the world with these bands? And she's like, yeah, like, I sold t-shirts and I was also a tour manager. I was like, people get paid to do this? They're like, she chuckled. She's like, oh yeah, like this is an amazing career and industry. I was still living in my van and she goes, I'll tell you what, a friend of mine owns a stagehand company in Atlanta, Georgia. And if you or your viewers don't know what a stagehand is basically like a local laborer. It's a call list of laborers, but they only work with concerts or trade shows or corporate events. Anytime these big events come in that need production, these stagehand laborers, it's no experience necessary. They come in to support the tech crews and the production crews. They dump the trucks and they help set up all the lights and the audio and all of that stuff. And she was like, I could get you on with this company. And I was like, man, that would be a dream come true to get to work backstage at these events. It was a bit of a long road, a long process to actually get going and to start doing that. So I would drive, back from Atlanta to my little town, sleep in my van, come back, sometimes sleep in a parking lot in Atlanta just to wait to see if I could get on these gigs. And I finally broke in and got on these gigs. And once when I was starting to work backstage, my first gig was at the Georgia Dome where the Atlanta Falcons played forever. And man, I was just like, this is a dream come true, man. Like getting to help build the lighting rigs and the sound and like, man, this is so cool getting to actually work on the field. And they accepted somebody like me, somebody that just at this point I had a GED. I did finish high school, but I didn't have any college. One amazing thing about the event industry is you can become a designer, an engineer, a technician, all without any sort of degree. All
Wow.
you do is be able to get in and choose a path and start to learn as you go. Now they do these days actually have like audio engineering degrees and show production degrees, but even still to this day, you don't actually need it to get involved in this industry. You just got to like go in there and you'll get rewarded by being enthusiastic and hustling. And I ended up, when I broke in, I started to learn about all about production. And then I started to specialize in a department called backline. I know that you don't know what backline is, Brock.
I don't know.
I'm like, this is education, right? Well, in my world, backline is the department that handles all of the music instruments. And so guitar technicians, drum techs, keyboard technicians, like literally there are career paths that have like guys that set up and take down guitars and drums and take care of music instruments for a living that travels the world with artists. Like that's called backline.
That's pretty fun.
Yeah, yeah, it's an actual thing. It's actually a really good, high-paying career, actually. And so I fell in love with backline because I played all these instruments, you know. So once when I started to get involved in backline locally in Atlanta from being a stagehand, by the time I was not even 20 years old at this point, about a year and a half, almost 2 years of being a local crew stagehand, I ended up booking my very first tour as a backline tech.
Who were you touring with?
Well, that first tour was a small R&B artist that he probably doesn't even play any hardly anymore. His name is Van Hunt. It was a van and trailer tour, meaning like a white 16 passenger van pulling a U-Haul trailer full of gear, going to all these clubs, driving around. Dude, I'd never traveled outside the Southeast, and then my very first tour, I had literally went to like 30 something states and a couple provinces in Canada within 6 months.
20 years old. That is awesome.
Yeah, I turned 20 on that tour. And so that's kind of how I got into touring from. I used to like to say, like, I went from living in my van to living in a bigger van, you know?
That's amazing, Kenny. Music really does have a power to bring people together and shape them. And it's clearly shaped you in a huge way. I think that's awesome that you had those mentors growing up that were able to like guide you in the right direction while also giving you opportunities to be successful, whether it be read a book of Who Moved My Cheese, teaching you accountability, or Rich Dad Poor Dad, which you said was more about like exploring investment within yourself rather than investment in the employee realm. And so I think that was awesome. And then that lady that set you up with the company in Atlanta, I can't imagine the opportunities, but I can also imagine that life on the tour had some highs, but it also had some lows. And at some point, you said in our conversation yesterday when we were on the phone that you started to feel a pull towards something different and a stirring. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, I am a career and life coach. I have a company called Crew Spire and a program called Crew Coach, where I basically help people do what I've done, earn success in this touring career because it's an incredible career. And there's a lot of people that completely don't know how to either get involved in the touring side. They don't know how to break in either from locally or getting into it. They feel like it's this elusive thing, this cool kids club that you got to know somebody that knows somebody. But I've broken it down step by step. In fact, I've got a couple of books that I've written and published um, that are career books to help people do it and coaching people to do it. And I'm also a speaker in that world. Like I love helping people bridge the gap from where they are now to where they want to be. And it's basically because of where I've came from and that how the music industry really helped shaped me. You know, it helped me become the person that I am today because it gave me so much opportunity. You know, there is no better educator than travel. I mean, you know, most people will sit there and go on a week-long vacation to like Hawaii or something and still talk about it 10 years later. Imagine 20 years of traveling like I have. But yeah, and so through all of that, this last like 5 years of my career, it's like, you know, I'm working to build this coaching program and be a speaker. So one day I can come off the road and finally pursue that full time. But the road's a finicky thing, man. It's like it keeps pulling you back. You'll get another call for another tour, another opportunity. And, you know, it's hard to say no because one, the money's good. Sometimes the gigs that you get to do are pretty incredible and the places that you get to go are pretty amazing. And so you start to weigh it out and be like, well, maybe I can grow my dream from the road. But the problem is you got to be able to schedule your dream in. And so especially with touring, it just kind of takes this leap. But the road kept calling me back. The road kept calling me back. And I remember last year in January, I was on tour with a band named Jonas Brothers, and we were headed to Mumbai, India. I was on a flight to Mumbai, India, and it's my 20th year touring, and I'm like, this is amazing. I'm going to Mumbai to do Lollapalooza Mumbai. Me, the guy that used to live in the van, from Villa Rica, Georgia, and I'm like, this is amazing, but like, how many more shows am I going to do before I go live my dream? God is calling me to go and be a speaker and a coach and a writer full time. Like, how many more shows do I need to do? And so at that point, I literally landed in Mumbai, went back to my hotel. I called my wife and said, I'm putting in my notice. Like, I'll give us a long notice. It'll be like a 6 month notice, but this is my last 6 months of touring. Like, I know I've said that before, but I've got to do it this time. So we finished, touring around the Asia and parts of Europe and United States, and we finished a South America tour. And the tour manager for the band's like, listen, man, if you want to take your notice away, you can stay out here with us. No big deal. Like planting the seed of like, just stay out here with us. Like if you just finished the Europe tour, it's just 2 months after your supposed end time, it's just 2 months. You can finish that, then you can stop. But I'm just like, I just can't do that. Like I need to be true to myself. The music industry, it used to be my mountain. It was the mountain that I had climbed. I got successful at it, but it's not my mountain anymore. I'm working towards doing this other thing that I'm feeling called to do. And so I'm like, I need to make this leap. But I started to entertain it. Once again, I even called my wife and said, hey, what would it look like if I did just do the Europe tour? Like instead of just ending in Mexico, why don't I just finish and just like finish the 2 months in Europe? She's kind of reminding me, she's like, you're doing it again. She's been with me 10 years. We met on tour, actually.
Women
And
usually know best.
ain't that the truth?
So you were weighing back and forth, right? You were going, I want to tour. I want to be my own speaker. I want to start my own business. I want to give back to people. You were just constant battle in your head. And you went for a run that changed everything
Yeah.
behind your hotel in Mexico. You said that the tour is ending in Mexico. So was this your last stop of your tour when you went on that run?
You know what? It was going to be. But like I said, I was entertaining just like kind of going back, having the week off and then going to Europe. I'm a fitness guy. I love fitness and I also love mental toughness. And you ever heard of Andy Frisella?
I have not.
He owns a company. He has a program called 75 Hard. You ever heard of it?
I have heard of that, yes.
Okay, well, I've done it a few times, and one thing I love about it is it gives me like some structure on the road. It's hard to do generally, but then add that to the crazy travel life of touring. But I was doing 75 hard at the time. We finished up a couple of shows in Mexico City and we were headed to Monterrey for another couple of shows before heading back home. We get to the hotel, I drop my bags and I'm like, well, I need to do my outdoor workout. For those of you that don't know 75 hard, it's basically like you got to do two 45-minute workouts. One of them has to be outside. You drink a gallon of water, you take a progress picture, you eat clean, you follow a diet, no alcohol. So I had my outdoor workout left to do because I woke up early in Mexico City to go to the gym. And so when I get to the hotel, it's like 5:30 in the afternoon. I drop my bags, I call my wife and just say I'm going to go out for a run real quick, and then I'm going to go to dinner with some of the guys. I'd been to this hotel before, multiple times actually, but out the back of my window, I could see the mountain range on the back side of my hotel. Now, if you don't know Monterrey, Monterrey is in the state of Nuevo Leon, which is like northern Mexico, just south of Texas. And it's very mountainous, like think California type of mountains, like real rocky, cactus, thorns, that type of thing.
It's a desert, but
Yeah.
mountain.
Yeah, it's a very kind of rough desert and so very dense type mountains. But in the city, on one side of Monterey, it's like skyscrapers in a mall with like Gucci and all of this. Like it's a very rich city. But on the other side of the mountain is like old Mexico. There's this mountain right behind the hotel with a trail that goes up. And I was watching that trail as I'm talking to my wife. I saw it last time I was here and I could see people walking up and down this trail. just locals, people wearing scrubs, families, old people, young people, workers, just people that clearly lived on the other side of the mountain coming down to the tourist side of the valley to work. And I was like, man, it's like pushing 6 o'clock, 6:15 at this point. It doesn't get dark for another hour. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go and hike up to the top of the mountain ridge where there's like a dirt road up at the top. And I'm going to go walk up the road a little bit so I can get some elevation, take some photos of the valley. It's beautiful. And then I'll like, hike back down and then I'll finish my run, get cleaned up and go to dinner with the guys. I'm starving because I hadn't eaten yet. I was on my keto diet. I'd already got up early to work out, so I'm tired. I was like, I'm gonna do it. And so I filled my crew water bottle, put my headphones in. I go to hike up this mountain trail. It took about, I don't know, 15 minutes to hike up this trail to the top of the road. And I walk up the road, I don't know, a couple hundred yards to get a little bit more elevation. I take some photos, snap some panos, and I go to turn around to start walking back to the trailhead. And all of a sudden, I felt this motorcycle like right up on me. And it startled me. I was like startled by this motorcycle and had two guys that were on this motorcycle. And they were like, give me your motioning for my phone. And I just kind of like blew it off, pointed to my ear, my headphones, and just kind of like waved at them. And I started walking quicker, you know, basically like I'm on an exercise. Oh, hey, how you doing? And just kept going. Played a little dumb, but I had that gut feeling like these guys were up to no good. I don't know. 60 seconds later, one of the two guys was like walking real fast, right up on me, right next to me, saying, "Give me, motioning for your phone." And that startled me. I was like, when I saw him right up on me, I looked back and the guy that was driving the motorcycle had parked the motorcycle in the middle of the dirt road. He had jumped off of it, was running towards me with a small boulder in his hand, and he chunked it at me. And I go to duck, and the boulder went past me, and I was like, I took off running, man. Like for my life, I took off running. And on the left side is this steep mountain drop, and I'm trying to get to that trailhead. I'm running, and all of a sudden another boulder comes flying by my left ear, and it kind of calls me to stumble and fall. And when I fell, my phone busted, my water bottle busted, my headphones popped out. And of course, if you've ever fallen on a dirt road, the gravel gets in your hands and your knees, and I'm wearing nothing but a t-shirt, some running shorts and shoes. Had nothing but like that on me and my hotel room key in my pocket. And so I go to pop back up because the one guy's on me and the other guy's coming at me. And when I go to pop back up, I look back and here's two more matching motorcycles with two guys apiece hauling ass towards me. And I was like, holy crap. Like fight or flight. I jumped up, I started running for my life, and I'm running, and all of a sudden I hear bang, snap, snap, like gunshots. And they started shooting at me. And my instinct was, man, I got two toddlers at home. Like I've got two little babies at home, and they need their dad. And I was not about to let them kidnap me and take me. I was not about to let them kill me. And so my instinct was I jumped off the mountain. And because I was running forward really fast and the mountain's very steep, I was kind of going at this forward momentum. And when I went to go to land, it snapped my femur and I rolled about 30 feet and slammed into this cactus. And I'm like, I go to stand up and this overwhelming pain hit me. And I collapsed again and I rolled another 10 or 15 feet and it broke my left forearm. And then I collided into this thorn bush and I pulled myself into this thorn bush and I'm like, oh my God, like this is crazy. Like, and of course, I screamed all kinds of obscenities and, I remember that what I yelled out was, I've got kids. Like my first instinct was, I've got kids, man, you know?
Were they
Um,
down looking down at you after you had jumped?
well, what ended up happening was I'm in this thorn bush, man. And I pulled myself into this thorn bush a bit more. and I could hear the commotion. The other motorcycles have finally kind of arrived, and I'm about probably 40 feet down the top of this mountain. And I'm in this thorn bush. I'm all ripped up to pieces with cactus, rock, and I assessed the damage. In fact, my arm was kind of like poked out, and I thought I had just kind of dislocated my elbow. So what I did was I was like, crack, and I snapped it back into place. I didn't realize I was just snapping my two bones back together. But and then I assessed the damage. I'm like, this insane pain I've never felt before. I've never broken a bone in my life, Matt. And I feel this pain in my hip. I'm like, I can't move. I can't walk, you know? And I'm in this thorn bush, and I hear a couple of the guys kind of go down to that trailhead, which was probably about 80 yards in front of me. I hadn't made it to it. And they were kind of coming down the trail to kind of cut me off. And peered through the thorns, and I could see two of those guys start to kind of make their way down to see where I had rolled because they didn't see me. They didn't know where I had landed. And I said, God, I was like, I said, God, please. I said, please tell me what to do. Cause I knew like if I didn't move, they would find me. But if I moved, they might hear me. And I was like, what do I do? I said, God, please tell me, what do I do? And at that moment, Brock, this hummingbird comes right in front of my face and starts feeding on the flower right in front of me. In my mind, I'm like, wow, that is so beautiful. But at the same thought, I'm like in the middle of this chaos, appreciating this beauty. And I said, God, you are such a comedian. I said, that's beautiful. Like, but please tell me, what do I do? Please, God. And right at that moment, this monarch butterfly flies right by my head, right in front of my face. And I hear a loud voice basically yelling at me saying, follow the butterfly. And so, with this divine strength, I put my right hand down, I put my left foot down, and I just drag myself through the thorns into an even deeper thorn bush, following this butterfly. And I pulled myself through it. It's, of course, you know, like scratching me to pieces, but there's a hierarchy to pain, right? And so I get into this thorn bush, and the monarch butterfly lands on the bush in front of me. It's not afraid of me. It lands on the bush, and I just stop. And about, I don't know, maybe 2 minutes later, one of those guys came around the bush because he probably heard me, came around the bush that I was just in. And he didn't see where I was at. Like it was that close, man. And I just kind of hunkered down, and I was like, this is crazy. And at that moment, I looked across the valley, and I could see the sun. The bottom of the sun was touching the top of the mountain across the valley. And I had this instinct to just like, I gotta wait till dark to move again. You know, I gotta wait till dark. And so I sat there in that first thorn bush till the sun went down. And to be honest with you, Brock, man, that's when the craziness started.
I bet. Nothing good happens after dark.
Well, man, like that was insane. Obviously, the leap of faith that I took, and trusting to follow this butterfly at that moment. Because I swear, like if I would have moved, I thought that they would have just found me, but I just had to surrender, man.
What was
I had
going
to
through
keep
your
going.
mind when you were laying there broken and stranded before dark?
I thought this is crazy. Like there was sadness for my family because what dad got himself into. What you know I got myself into. I was so sad for my wife and my kids. Like, I'm so sorry. I was, afraid for my life. I was in a crazy pain, and I just I just prayed, man. I just said, God, please show me what to do. Please protect me. And they're hunting me at this point. They're looking in all the bushes. They're hunting me. I hear the commotion, the motorcycles up top. And after it went dark, I felt confident enough to start to drag myself down this mountain. Now, it took me about 15 minutes to get up the mountain, but man, I ended up spending 12 hours on that mountain. It would sometimes take me, I don't know, 2 hours to go 15 feet to drag myself because I couldn't walk. I only had opposite limbs to use. My butt or my lower back was ripped to pieces. My shorts start to get ripped up. My shirt was starting to get ripped up because of the rocks. And I started to get scraped up. My body, like physically starting to get scraped up. I would have to use one side and then I would try to use the other side, which I would almost couldn't do because the hip was broken, the femur was broken. Then I would flip on my stomach and drag myself that way. I mean, like, and then by the time I made it down, of course, my whole body's ripped to pieces. For the first bulk of it, I had to stay in the thorn bushes. So I'm going through thorn bush to thorn bush to thorn bush just to keep cover because I could hear them. Now, at some point, they did leave. I don't know how long they ended up staying out there. Maybe they stayed out there for the first few hours looking for me. And imagine a couple of those guys probably stayed at the bottom of the mountain to see if I had popped out. What was so difficult about it was, Brock, my hotel was only a block and a half away. And because of the steepness of the mountain, I was on the ninth floor of that hotel. My window was open. I could literally see my hotel room. I could see the front of the hotel, cars pulling up, people, commotion. I could hear the music from the rooftop bar. Like the hotel was right there. Nobody knew where I was. Nobody from my camp, we call them, nobody from my organization, the tour knew where I was. Kenny always goes out to run. I'm a kind of loner that way. Not a lot of healthy people on these tours. And so I started to just continue to drag myself. But see, I would like get to a point where I would be done, man. I would say, I can't do this anymore. Like it's impossible. I cannot keep going. And I would give up. And so I'd lay my head back in the thorns. I'd close my eyes. I don't know how long it lasted. I would close my eyes, maybe 20 minutes. And then all of a sudden, I would get a vision of how to move forward through a challenge I was trying to get around. Maybe it was over a log or around a bush or through a rocky area. And I would get a vision on how to make it through it. And then this voice, the same voice that told me to follow the butterfly, God, he would wake me up and say, keep moving forward. And this happened throughout the entire time. I would get to a point where I would make it through this challenge. I would drag my broken body a little bit further, a little bit further. I would get stuck. I couldn't figure out how to get through. I would give up and then I would lay my head back on the rocks or the thorns. And then I would get a vision on how to overcome that challenge. And then I would get woken up with keep moving forward. And I would get this divine strength and I would overcome that challenge just like the vision I had.
That's
And this
incredible.
incredible, man. It kept happening time and time and time again. See, I would see my hotel and at first it was like, okay, it's just right there. It's just right there. Like I would see where I needed to go. It's just right there. But then that would get overwhelming because of the pace. And so I had to stop looking at the goal, stop looking at the vision, and start shortening the goal. And then it would be like, instead of the hotel, if I could just make it to the next rock, if I could just make it to the next tree, make it to the next bush. Then when the minutia of like going through those motions got overwhelming and sad because of how slow it would go, I would look back up at the hotel and double check myself to remind myself, okay, I can make this. I can do this, man. My family needs me. My kids need me. My wife needs me. And there was gifts that I got from God along the way. I don't have it here on me. I should have grabbed it, but I have this rock. Because when you have one hand to push on this thorny, rocky, deserty ground, well, my hand started to get tore up, and I had found this flat rock that literally perfectly fit my hand. That was about this. It was about, a couple inches thick, fit my hand perfectly. And I would use that to kind of give me some leverage. But then something would happen and I would lose it. And it would like roll somewhere. I would lose it. But that rock kept showing back up. That same rock would just show back up, show back up. I'm like, this is crazy. This rock is like, it was meant to be with me. And I still have it today, actually. Um,
Wow. That is awesome. That's so inspiring and incredible. In the midst of chaos and uncertainty, you found the courage to trust in the Lord. when you could have just very easily just curled up and said, I'm done. I also thought it was beautiful that you took your eyes off of yourself and you kept thinking about your family, kept thinking about your wife and your two kids. I think more people need to do that, take their eyes off of themselves and focus more on other people and what's important rather than their current situation. I mean, yours is way different than somebody having a bad day, right? You had a bad couple hours. And
Yeah,
so,
well, I'll tell you, I would say it was about maybe 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. I made it to this wall that was kind of behind this house property that was on the street. Now, at this point, I'm probably two-thirds of the way down. Another gift was this tire that had a pole sticking out of it. It was like concrete, like some sort of like a metal pole with a tire. And I was able to pull myself up onto this kind of pole to kind of stand up and let the blood rush down and give my body and my hips some stretch. And just kind of like the wind was blowing over me, and it was late in the middle of the night. I knew it was probably around 1 or 2 because the moon had already crossed over the center line of the sky. I was a Boy Scout, so you kind of learn some of those things. And uh, I was looking up at the where I started, just kind of recollecting the journey so far, and I was like, man, like this is so crazy. And I see that these lights had turned on. It looked like back porch lights, like floodlights had turned on. There was like 6 of them. And all of a sudden, like dogs started barking like crazy. There were dogs that were barking throughout the night at the local homes because clearly somebody was out there. They knew, dogs are very intuitive. But all of a sudden, these lights started to move down the mountain. I was like, that's them. They're coming back at me. They're coming back out to find me because clearly they didn't see that I had come out yet. And so I ended up kind of crashing my body back down because I couldn't just sit down. My hip was broken. I couldn't move. I couldn't hop or anything because the pain was insane. I came crashing back down once again, and I go to try to pull myself around this wall. And along this wall is a very dense wooded area. But there was these gullies that would kind of go up and down all the way down to the street. It looked very dark, very dense, and very treacherous. And I started to try and go around it, but they were after me. They were coming back down the mountain with dogs. And I was like, this is it, man. So I ended up kind of like dragging my body to this other thorn bush. And I was like, man, it's not even as thick as the first one. Like, I've got nothing left in me. And so I'm laying there rather, in this thorn bush that's not really covering me. Here they come. I start to hear their voices. They're getting closer. I prayed to God. I said, please don't let them find me. And I had a black shirt on with my Crusader logo on it, and I covered up my logo. I'm laying on my back. I'm just like, this is it. I can't get away from dogs. And one of these guys was like 10 feet from that bush. And for whatever reason, he walks the other way. Like unbelievably divine intervention, man. Palpable from the visions, the voices, the gifts that I got, like the rock, and there was some other ones that I had gotten. In that moment right there, I was like, I just felt like God's going to get me through this. Like at some point, I knew God had his hands on me on this descent. Like I knew it. Like in my mind, I thought, I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it. And after that moment, they walked the other way. For some reason, the dog didn't smell me or see me. Crazy. And when I started to be able to move again, I waited there probably for about 45 minutes till I felt like they were like way away. I started to move again, and in front of me was this gully, one of those gullies that went down. And I was like, you know what? I need to kind of stay near this wall because I know for a fact that if I hug this wall, it does go to the street. I don't know if I go the other way what I'm going to be up against, and if I'm going to have to go around something big. Like I just don't know. But I knew that this wall, it had to, even though it had these dips and crevices and these gullies, it definitely goes to the street and it can't be that tall of a wall, right? And so I slid down this gully where it was like dense kind of wood area, very dark. I could not see in this gully from the top of it. I slid down on my stomach, and when I landed on the bottom, I look over and the moonlight was shining through the trees on this huge patch of aloe. And I was like, wow, that's beautiful. And I thought, man, like I hadn't eaten since the morning. I had no water. My mouth was so dry. I was so parched. And I was like, yes, thank you, God. Like I need something because I was done energy wise, like spiritually felt done, you know?
Yeah, you were tapped out. You were drained.
I was completely wiped. And as soon as I landed down there, I see the aloe. I look over and there is this snake. I mean, probably as big as my forearm, man. This snake laying across the aloe, like some of the aloe. And it looks at me. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, I'm just passing through, Mr. Snake. You know, like I even said that out loud. I said, I'm just passing through. I'm just passing through, you know. Now, I ended up breaking off some of that aloe and eating it. Fun fact about aloe, apparently, is it is very nourishing, but it must have some sort of protective mechanism because it dried me out even worse. It nourished me, but like the gel was just like super drying me out. But it did give me some extra energy, you know? And I ended up spending, I'm serious when I say this, I ended up spending 3 hours passing that snake in that gully that night. 3 hours because of, I was like, I was so broken. I was so done. And I knew I've watched enough Naked and Afraid and Discovery Channel to know that in that area are the tarantulas, the banana spiders, scorpions, like that stuff's going in my mind, the rattlesnakes.
That's a
And of
no
course,
for me, boss.
dude, that snake was clearly knew that I was in distress and like wanted nothing to do with me. He was just like stretched out on the aloe in the moonlight. And I like pass by this snake. I finally make it up and over these challenges. The exact same thing would happen. I would give up. I would close my eyes, lay my head back, and then I would see a vision on how to get over this obstacle. I would get woken up once again with the voice, keep moving forward, keep moving forward. And then I kind of finally made it past that. I got to the wall and I'm dragging myself along. You know, I'm dragging myself over this treacherous landscape. And I finally make it to another gift, which was this bucket. This 5 gallon bucket was sitting against the wall. That ended up giving me a little bit of relief to sit on, to be able to kind of like take some pressure off my hip and all of that. I finally make it down to like the last 8 feet, maybe 8 to 10 feet. And then the last 8 to 10 feet, it was like this tall grass on a very steep incline that went to the sidewalk in the street. And at the top of this graph was another gift, which was like half of a bin, like a plastic bin. Half of it was sitting there. And so I was able to put my head and my shoulders in this bin and kind of push myself, and that bin separated the grass enough for me to slide down this hill. But what was so crazy was my mind, I'm going, they're probably down here. They're probably just waiting. You know, they're probably waiting for this guy to come out because I didn't go back the same way I came. Obviously, I had to go a whole different way down this mountain because I wasn't going to go near that trailhead, you know? And so I make it down. I'm upside down on my back with my head in this bin in this grassy area. I make it down. And at that moment, coincidentally, there was this car with like 6 guys in it. And it comes in K turns. You know what a K turn is? A K turn, like meaning like it backed up like a K to turn around. It literally pulled to turn around, shined its headlights right on me. And there's this gringo upside down, ripped to pieces, bloody, with his head in a bin. And I look right in the eyes of these guys. They're all wearing like construction vests. And so these were clearly construction workers on their way to work. They just like looked at me, then they backed up and left. And I was like, this is crazy. And in my mind, I thought, I don't know, man. Maybe they're like, they don't want nothing to do with this scene. They probably know what's up on the other side of that mountain. See, what I didn't know until later was the neighborhood on the backside of that mountain was one of the most dangerous favelas, most dangerous neighborhoods in all of the Americas. It's one of the oldest cartel like home bases. And those guys were apparently like the watchmen for that neighborhood. And here's this gringo up there taking pictures. Like, who are you, right? And these guys, like, notoriously, we learned all about them as touring people. It's like they're most likely not going to take your phone and rob you. Like, they're going to kill you. They're probably just going to take you out. They might kidnap you and ransom you, but probably not. They'll probably just take you out. And I wasn't going to about to let that happen. I was fighting, man. I fought for my life that night. So I make it down to the sidewalk. I'm scared with every second a car passes. It's already daylight at that point. Like the sun had finally come up. I spent over 12 hours dragging my body down that mountain. And I make it down to the street level. I cross the street. I drag my body across the street. And here's what's so crazy. Like, I have almost nothing left in me. My body's ripped to pieces. I've got cactus deep embedded into me, thorns in me, broken hip, broken arm. And I make it across the street. By the grace of God, I drag myself across the asphalt. And on this one section, I was about 2.5 blocks from the corner where it was another block and a half down to my hotel, down this hill. I just need to make it to my hotel. If I can make it to my hotel, like maybe I can be saved. But the closer I would get to the corner, the closer I was getting to the start of this whole thing at that trailhead. Because that's where the trail.
And you thought they were waiting for you.
I was like, they probably were just going to wait. And at this point, it was daylight. It was twilight. The sun wasn't fully up, but it was daytime. You know what I mean? And people were starting to go to work and things like that. But what was so crazy was I was in such pain that on the 2 blocks that I had to drag myself along, the only 2 blocks on both sides, there was for some reason this layer of hay. Like, I don't know why, but like not on one, not on the other side, not past it, literally on the 2 blocks that I had to drag myself from that point to the corner was a layer of hay that softened the scrape enough for me to manage dragging myself all the way 2 blocks down the sidewalk.
That's divine right there.
Crazy. Yet another gift from God. A car would pass, and some of them I looked a little sketchy. They would slow past me. I wouldn't, I'd kind of just hide my face and kind of hide myself and just lay there like, please pass. And then I would see like some other cars I would try to like wave my hand out for, but people were not like going to stop. I yelled out the best I could. At that point, my mouth was so dry that I couldn't speak almost. And I would yell out for some people I would see walking at the intersection. And finally, as I got closer to the intersection, I see this young guy talking on my phone on speakerphone, and I yelled out, I said, help me, help me. And the guy sees me and he kind of hesitantly like walks over, kind of a young guy, probably about your age, walks over. At this point, like I'm catty corner from the start of that trailhead, from the bottom of the trailhead. And he comes up to me and I said, look, I know I probably look crazy. You don't have to help me up, but I was attacked and I just need some help. If you could just go around the corner and tell the hotel that one of their guests has been attacked and he's up here on the sidewalk and I can't walk. And so he's like, confirms the hotel and he goes around there and it takes him about 5 to 8 minutes to get someone. And that was one of the most scariest 5 to 8 minutes because I'm looking at the trailhead across the street where it all started. And I was just like, please come. Like, I'm praying. Even though I knew at some points on the mountain that, like, if I was meant to die, I should have died already. And I knew that God was saving my life, but I was still scared. The surrender was scary, man. And finally, the hotel came, and they were obviously shocked to see me. And they put me into their kind of hotel vehicle. And of course, I'm in crazy pain. They give me some water, and I asked for some soda, and a wave of emotion hit me. I was just like in crazy shock, you can imagine. And I'm sitting there in front of the hotel and they're trying to figure out who I am. They don't speak English. I don't speak Spanish. And all of my stuff was in the room. The only thing I had was my room key. Like that was all that was left. I didn't have my phone. I didn't have anything. It was all lost on the mountain. And I had my room key. And so I tell them like, hey, here's my room number, my passport, everything's in my room. You can confirm my identity. And I tried to tell them the name of our tour manager. Well, it was about 7:30 in the morning at this point, and I'm sitting in the car at the hotel in this SUV, and my tour manager, I could see him start to walk towards the car. Now it's all uh, kind of like tinted windows, so he couldn't see in. And they opened the door, and when he saw me, he turned white as a ghost. And it's like it's because like me of all people, the fitness guy, the positive guy, the guy that's like got it together, the guy that's like, the guy that's so encouraging to everybody. Like here I am, looking crazy, completely broken and beaten up, and um he's like, man, they came to me and they found me right before I sat down for breakfast, and they were like, some Kevin guy. And he's like, we don't have a Kevin. Like, I don't know who you're talking about. Maybe it's not for me. And he was just like, oh my God, like this is insane, obviously. And so he brought one of the security guys that travels with the artist down to sit with me, to be with me, because the Mexican police came up and they were trying to like talk to me and interrogate me on the site. And I was like, I didn't see faces, I didn't see nothing. Like I don't know who's who. Like I know that the cartel is so embedded in that country. I didn't trust anybody, man. I said nothing.
Yeah, they're
I didn't.
embedded with the police officers sometimes too.
That's what you hear, and like, and I'm like, I'm savvy enough to understand this. And then I just remember the security guy, Steve, man, wonderful soul. He gives me his phone to call my wife because my wife obviously had no idea. The last message I left her was, hey, I'm going out for a run. She had fallen asleep. I normally do this, nothing abnormal. I've been a touring guy for so long. Like, this is normal stuff. And so I called from Steve's phone. Of course, she didn't pick up because she didn't know the number. And I leave this message. I said, baby, hi, it's me. I was just attacked and I'm about to head to the hospital. I said, I love you. And that's all I could muster, man. That's all I could get out. And I just like, I felt so bad for my kids and my family. And and so then I went to the hospital. They looked me over like, man, you need an emergency hip transplant. They're like, it's one thing breaking your femur, but there's some vital arteries that run through that area of your hip, and like they were surprised that I didn't have an aneurysm and die on the mountain, because breaking your femur is one thing, but like actually dragging it along and doing what I did for over 12 hours is a miracle. The artist ended up leaving the security guy, Steve, with me the entire time. They ended up sending a private medical jet to fly me out of the country back to Tampa where I lived. And I had the emergency hip transplant. I got a full total hip transplant, and they repaired my arm, and I've been in recovery. That was in August. And I'm doing great considering, but by the grace of God, man, did I make it off that mountain. And it forced me to never do touring again, to actually focus on what we're doing now. This is kind of our early stage of the journey of me, honoring God's direction for me and surrendering is being able to do things like this with you, Brock, sharing this story for someone, just encouraging them that, hey, listen, it might not be an attack from the cartel, but there are things in your life where you will have to leap. There will be times in your life where you will have to follow the butterfly, where you will have to surrender to the voice that says move. When God says to move, you got to move. And there will be times in your life, it might not be a mountain in Mexico, and I hope it's never like this for you, but there'll be times where you're going to be so overwhelmed at how far you got to drag yourself along towards your destination that you got to shorten the goal and focus on just the next stop and the next step and the next step. you know if nothing else, I just want to encourage your listeners that whatever they go through, You are stronger than you think when it matters most, man. And that the most important thing to understand is you've got to keep moving forward. You have to keep moving forward.
Wow, thank you for that, Kenny. That's truly a transformative experience. And your ending statement about keep moving forward and keep going inspires me because, like I said earlier, we have bad days, but nothing has ever come down to fighting for my life. And hearing your journey, Kenny, has been nothing short of incredible. From that terrifying day in Mexico to finding the strength and your faith to keep moving forward because you have shown what true resilience and surrender looks like. Your story is not about what happened to you, but it's how you responded and how it's reshaped you into the man that you are today. And so I just want to say thank you, Kenny. Your words are truly powerful. And as I sit here reflecting on what you just shared, I just can't help but think about how many of us have found ourselves in places where we're not sure if we can keep going. And we've all faced moments where the road ahead seems impossible, where the pain is too much, and where we felt like we were crawling through life just to survive. Kenny's story shows us something powerful that sometimes the next step isn't about having all the answers or knowing exactly where we're headed, but it's trusting what we can't see and taking that step forward. It's easy to think that we have to have it all figured out, that we have to have it all planned out before we take action. We don't have to wait for the perfect moment or the perfect plan or the perfect circumstances because Kenny's journey reminds us that we don't have to wait for everything to be perfect. In fact, it's often in the mess and the struggle that we find our true purpose. In those moments where we feel like we're at rock bottom, crawling through the thorns, crawling through the desert, but we just need to trust that our greater plan is unfolding. Because when Kenny heard those words, follow the butterfly, he didn't know where it was leading him. It actually led him into a bigger thorn bush that caused more hurt, but he followed it anyways. And that's the kind of faith and courage we all need to have in our lives. Because sometimes it's not about the end goal, it's about taking that next step, even when it feels impossible, even when it's painful, even when we're not sure if we're going to make it through. And if you're listening to this today and you're facing your own impossible season, I want you to know this. You are not alone. You don't need to have it all figured out. Just take that next step forward. Trust that even in the messy, even in the slow, there's still going to be progress. Keep your eyes off of the bigger picture and focus on just taking that next step. And that's how you will keep moving forward. And that's how you will find your way on the other side of the storm or back to the hotel, just like Kenny did. So no matter where you are right now, whether you're struggling, healing, or just trying to make it through the day, I want you to remember that you are stronger than you think. And the next step you take, no matter how small, could be something that leads you to something greater than you have ever imagined. So keep moving forward, even if it's messy, even if it's slow. Just keep going. Think about your own life for a moment. Are there certain times where you felt lost, uncertain, or unsure of what's next? Maybe that place you're in right now. You don't have to have all the answers, and you don't have to see the entire path that's laid out in front of you. But here's what I want you to remember. Just like how Kenny found guidance in a seemingly small sign, the butterfly, and just like the Israelites had a cloud by day and a fire by night to guide them, that same God is leading you too. He's always been there, showing you the way, whether you realize it or not. This takes us to a powerful truth from the Bible for our verse of the week. And I think that this is one that can encourage you today. So in Exodus 13 through 21, in this passage, it's a beautiful picture that God's faithfulness and guidance is everlasting. For the Israelites wandering through the wilderness in Egypt, God didn't leave them to figure it out on their own, but He went before them, leading them through the day with a pillar of a cloud. And by night, there was a pillar of fire. His presence was constant, guiding them in every step of the way. Now, I want you to think about this for a moment. The Israelites were walking through an unknown land, much like we often do sometimes in our own lives, and they didn't know what obstacles were laying ahead. They didn't know how long it was going to take to reach the ultimate promised land, but God gave them clear guidance every step of the way. He showed them the way. Now, here's the context. The Israelites had just left Egypt. They were walking into the unknown, and they had no Google Maps, no GPS, just desert in front of them. But God didn't abandon them to figure it out on their own. He gave them visible direction, a pillar of a cloud and a fire by night. It was constant, and it never left its place in front of them. Don't miss this. I'll let you in on a little secret. God didn't point them in a direction and wish them well. No, 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 no. He went before them and showed them the way. He didn't send them out on their own, but he personally led the way. Now, here's the teaching moment I want to take away from all of this. God's guidance doesn't always look like a full laid out plan. Often it's not about clarity for the whole journey. It's about trust for the next step. He provides just enough to keep the light going. And that brings us back to Kenny. He didn't have a pillar of fire or a cloud, but he had something as specific for his moment that he needed. A butterfly, visions, and a voice from God telling him to keep going. That very butterfly, it wasn't random, but it was a sign, a direction, or you could say a pillar in its own way, leading him out of danger and into safety. Because if he hadn't followed that butterfly, no, we wouldn't know what would have happened, because it eventually led to transformation. Isn't it incredible that the same God who led the Israelites through the wilderness of Egypt is the same God who met Kenny fighting for his life? Is the same God that is leading you today? Because you might be in a season where you feel lost or unsure, maybe emotionally, spiritually, or even physically. But just like the Israelites, just like Kenny, you are not without direction. God's presence is with you, and he is leading the charge. And although the pillar might not be what you expect, he is speaking, he is guiding, and his light has not left you. So what does that mean for us today? It means that we need to keep our eyes and hearts open in the ways that God may speak to us. It might not come as a loud voice or a dramatic moment. It might be a whisper, a small sign, or a small nudge in our spirits. But don't miss it, because it looks different than we expect. It means we don't have to wait until we have all the answers to take the next step. God rarely lays out the entire journey in advance, but he always just gives us enough light to focus on the step that we're on. And obedience often comes with clarity. Even when we're afraid, even when we're hurting, even when we don't feel ready, if we follow God, he will meet us there. He doesn't just point out the way, but he walks us through it. So let this verse of the week in Exodus serve as both an encouragement and as a challenge for us all to keep walking, keep trusting, and keep following God. Since the pillar remains steady, God continues to guide us, lighting our way, whether it's day or night. The ultimate choice is ours. Will we follow or not? So as I wrap up episode 12, I just want to say thank you again for tuning in on the stories that shape us. If you feel like this message resonated with you, I encourage you to share it with someone who needs to hear it. No matter where you're at today, I promise you, God is ahead of you, lighting the way. But until next time, I want to encourage you to keep moving forward, trust your journey, and remember that you're not alone. This has been The Stories That Shape Us. Join us each week for real stories, real growth, and real impact. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.